pediatric desert. So anyway, I have the good fortune to be working there. Most of my patients are Spanish speaking only. Um, a population that is very much at risk right now. We are in very, very dire times. I just don't even know what to say. It's very um, it's just really awful what's happening right now, and we're going to have to continue to do what we can to counterbalance it. Um, but I'm here. I'm also a member, an elected member of the Democratic Central Committee, and I chair their ad hoc committee on legislation. I also have a number of other hats. I serve on the boards of Sustainable Solano, the Sierra Club, Solano Group, Physicians for Social Responsibility, San Francisco Bay Area, Climate Reality Bay Area, and as well as the Napa Solano Medical Society. I'm a delegate to the California Democratic Party as well as a delegate to the California Medical Association. So I wear multiple hats. Um, you would think I didn't have time for anything else. It's just that I just don't have a life. That's the problem. So if I had a life, I'd probably not be doing all this stuff. So on with the purpose for my being here. So I just wanted to come and share a bit with you about what bills that we're looking at the Central Committee. I just want to do kind of a quick review where we are in the legislative process. So let me just share my screen. Thank you very much, Paula. Hopefully y'all can see that. This is the California State Legislature legislative calendar. Here we are at this point. So basically, what happens is our bills are introduced in, deadline is in mid-February. They originate in whatever house of origin they are. So say it's an assembly bill. So you have the assembly and then the Senate. So say it's an assembly bill. At the assembly, it will go through a process where it's heard in committee. It has to, the bills have to pass out of committee. Then they go, some of them go to like a fiscal committee, depending on whether they cost the state money. Some go right to the floor of the assembly. They have to be voted through all those. And if they make it, then they're sent over to the opposite house, which would be the Senate. That's where we are at this point. The deadline for all those bills to be voted out of their house of origin was June 6th. And right now they're starting in the opposite house. So if it was an assembly bill and it made it through, it's now in the Senate. And most of them have been assigned to committees at this point. We're going to have a budget process. The budget deadline is June 15th. My understanding is we are like totally broke. So most bills that required money that went through the legislature didn't make it out of committee, or they didn't make it out of the fiscal committee because there's not going to be any money pretty much to fund them. So a lot of good bills died. They go to appropriations, which is the fiscal committee, to die. And that's what's happened. And then they have to go through the opposite house, like we spoke about. And then if they're passed through the other house, they go through the same process through committee and then on the floor of say the Senate, and then they're voted. If they pass again, if they're amended, say if it's an assembly bill that's in the Senate, if they're amended in the Senate, they have to go back to the assembly to ratify the amendments. And if they pass out of that, then they'll go to the governor's desk. And the governor, I guess his last day to sign or veto bills is October 12th. So that's just a quick overview of the legislative process. And let me know if you have any questions about that. Here are our bills for the Central Committee. I won't go through all of them, but there are some that I'd like to highlight. We're a little bit kind of climate heavy. That's because that is my one of my major focuses, although certainly we take into consider social justice, some health issues, and so forth. So, and we're certainly open to hearing any bills that people are interested in following. You know, it's an open door policy. So basically, we just to point something out to you. So say this is a bill by Assemblymember Bauer Cahan, who is in Contra Costa County. She's an environmental lawyer. This bill particularly is about data centers and how much energy they use. I mean, data centers are going to be a real issue because they take a lot of energy. This bill basically says that the folks that own the data centers or run them have to be responsible for the cost of the energy that they are using. I guess maybe that is kind of a summary. And so we want to support that bill. So the S means that we are supporting that bill. I just want to show you where these bills, where we kind of follow them at is a place called Leg Info, or it's a legislative information where you can look at the bills in depth. And we won't go into too much, but says the bill name and the number. This says who the author is. Sometimes there is, or who introduced it. Sometimes there are co-authors. And then it goes all through the bill and all the language. All the red are amendments and blue are amendments by addition. Red strike throughs are amendments by deletion. And then you can look at the status of the bills, like where they were in committee, how many people voted what, and then where they are now. You also can look and see where, well, let's see, what did not doctor, what did Lori Wilson vote on this bill? So she voted yes on this bill. So we can look at our own legislators to see where they have fallen on these bills. And maybe this is going, and I won't go too much more into this, but you can also subscribe to different bills so that you can get notified when there's a change in them. So this tells me where it is, and I'll be notified by email, but anybody can sign up for that. So I'm going to go back to our bill list. Hang on, I have to get this stuff out of my way. Hang on, I always have some problems with, all right, hang on.
Bonnie, what's the difference between tracking the bill and subscribing to it, or is those just
It's the same. I mean,
same
this is
thing?
just a way, subscribing means that I'm notified when there's a change. So I don't have to kind of go in and kind of keep looking at it. I'll get an email that says, "Oh, it's been amended," or "Oh, it's made it out, it's to in this committee now," or "Oh, it passed into that committee," or it tells me, you know,
Every move it makes, which it does for me, but I don't subscribe. I track them, which I think was another option on the bill page. I just wondered if there was a
okay,
difference between that, between
and you may know more than I do. So hey, so I
I doubt it.
no, there's no problem with that. And maybe it's hard to say whether there hang on, we can go back. And so you're saying on the bill page, let's go back to that. There is a way to track.
Yeah, up in the upper right,
Oh, right. I wonder if
track
that's just the
bill. I'd
same
never
thing.
noticed my subscriptions, but that's what I use as track bill.
Oh, just you just hit it and then but this is the exact same thing. And you
Just
just
takes you
select
to the same
all here,
place.
right? And then you add notifications and it added it to my list. So you must somehow, I don't know if you
End
somehow,
up at the same place,
yeah,
just different.
exactly.
Because
Exactly.
it's very handy because those come and just drop into my email.
Exactly. And you know what? You just showed me a shortcut. Instead
Yay.
of me manually having to go back and put the bill in, which is what I did. But anyway, so just to show you kind of where we are looking at the bill and how we can look at who's voted for it, how many votes, how controversial it is. Let's go on. These were a couple of bills that Joseph was really interested in, tobacco related, right? Because that's where he's focused. And they're moving along nicely. These assembly bills are now in the Senate, and they are waiting for assignment. They're in the Rules Committee waiting for assignment. This bill is an interesting bill. This bill and SB 684. So these bills are the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act of 2025. They both are pretty much the exact same bill. One's in the Assembly, written by an Assembly member. One's in the Senate, written by a senator. Senator Menjivar, she is the chair of the Health Committee. What these bills do is they say that the fossil fuel industry, it creates this climate super fund that it says the fossil fuel industry has done damage to our communities and to our atmosphere and to our environment, and that they need to pay for it instead of the taxpayers or the insurance companies paying for the damage that they've done, that they should be held liable for that. And we would collect money from them and put it into this polluters pay climate super fund. And the money would be used to mitigate or the damage or to support the communities that have been affected. These bills are very interesting because they are still in committee in their House of Origin. They require a two-thirds vote because of the kind of bill it is, and they are what they consider urgency measures. So most people would say, oh, they're dead because they haven't made it out of committee, out of the House of Origin. But because they're urgency measures, as long as the author can get their two-thirds vote from their colleagues, they can bring this bill back at any time. So it's a little, so a lot of people, there's a lot of misunderstanding about these bills. They think, oh, it's dead. No, it's not. They're not dead. Or they're 2-year bills. So we can talk a little bit about that. But they are still alive, and people are working very, very hard to have them get passed through the legislature. They would bring money into the state. That's the other thing. So they would actually benefit our budget if they were to pass. But if you watch like MSNBC, you'll see ads against these bills, and you will see ads supporting these bills, and right next to each other too, right? It's really interesting. So the fossil fuel industry is spending millions of dollars to try to kill these bills. Just to let you know. Anybody with and these have this is when we would not be the first people to do this if this was to happen. Both Vermont and New York have already done this.
Mm.
So we are just kind of trying to do what they've done, in doing that. So again, I mean, it's going to be a hard lift. I was at a rally in Sacramento a couple of weeks ago. There was a Make a Polluters Pay rally at the Capitol, and there are a number of environmental groups like Centers for Biological Diversity, Sierra Club. I mean, the list is long of groups that are really trying to get these bills to pass. So I just want to bring those up. Um, this bill is from our Senator Cabaldon. I mean, I think he's just doing a great job personally. This one is a local bill. This would affect us locally. What this says, and this is kind of like an anti-California for never bill, saying that so so farmers can take advantage of something called the Williamson Act, which gives them a different tax levy or a different tax break. And what this is saying that you basically can only be a farmer to take advantage. You can't be California forever to take advantage of this tax break, even though you might own land that used to be a farm. So so I guess that's kind of the short description of it. But so that's going through nicely into the legislature. Um, let's go to ones that we oppose. There are two kind of major ones. I don't know if any of you have heard of AB 942. That's one that is about rooftop solar, that you can't pass off on the benefits to, like, say, if you have a house with solar, you sell it. The people who buy the house can't benefit in the same way, as far as the rates are concerned, that the original person who put the solar on could. So this is kind of an anti-rooftop solar bill. So we are opposed to it. There are two others that have to do with carbon dioxide pipelines. I think I came and spoke to this group, I think a year ago or so, about the project, the Montezuma wetlands, or the Montezuma LLC Carbon Hub, where this developer, Jim Levine, wants to, like, put that he wants to collect dirty carbon dioxide from the refineries and from the power plants in Contra Costa, and he wants to ship it to southern Solano County and then dump it deep into the ground, this kind of toxic carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide in a concentrated form is lethal. So, and if the pipeline leaks, there's a number of issues. It could hurt wildlife, it could hurt people. It could also acidify the water. So, when carbon dioxide mixes with water, it produces carbonic acid, and it can cause dead zones in water, like in the marsh, in the delta, in the Sacramento River, in the bay. And those dead zones can go for miles and last for years. So there are many issues with this. And these two bills, AB 881 and SB 614, they would both eliminate so right now there is a temporary moratorium on these carbon dioxide pipelines. So in this state, what both these bills would do would eliminate the moratorium on carbon dioxide pipelines, and so we're opposed to those. We don't want to eliminate the moratorium. We were working with the federal government before this guy took over, and getting setting, because there's no guardrails on these pipelines. There's no regulations. They don't have a way to monitor them. The government has not done that. And so we were in the midst of doing that when the administration changed, and who knows what's going to happen with this administration. But anyway, so we are opposed. Um, just one bill that we're watching. Watching means we don't support or oppose. This is a little tricky because this is our assembly member. And what she's saying is that she wants to put aside some of the protections for endangered species to do the Highway 37 work. And we're not that happy about it. But at the same time, she's our assembly member, and we have other folks around. So we're kind of just, okay, we're going to watch, but it's going quickly through the legislature. It doesn't have any opposition there, but something that we really want to keep our eye on. Um, the other one that I want to talk about are bills of consideration. Um, there's a couple that are pipeline bills about, preventing spills, like in the ocean, and like like and the responsibility, if there were a spill, who's responsible. So there these two bills. So we'll bring these up at our next meeting, which is the third Wednesday. So I guess it's like
Next
2 weeks.
Wednesday.
Oh, next Wednesday. Thank you, Paula. So we'll talk about that. This is another one, though, that I'm really excited about. Um, I attended a climate summit in Sacramento on Earth Day, actually. It was the Climate Center, which is up in Sonoma, but they do some great work. And there was a presentation that I attended on some new technology around geothermal energy, and it is really cutting edge stuff. So this group in Utah, Fervo Energy, has developed this technology that doesn't depend on. So most geothermal that you hear about, like in Iceland, up in Sonoma, even in Napa, with the geysers and that sort of thing, um, most they depend on like already fractured earth, so that geysers are coming through, right? You have active hot water bubbling out of the earth, and then you can utilize that heat to produce electricity. What this technology does is called hot rock technology. Basically, all it entails is going down far enough to the earth to finding the hot part of the earth and putting water in, and then taking water out, and then using that water to in fact, I have a graphic on it I'd like to share if folks don't mind, because I think this is really important. um Hang on, I don't think this is it. I think it's, no, it's this one here. So this shows, so you basically, you just inject water, and it's not potable water. It's not water that you can drink or anything. They don't need drinking water. So they just inject the water, and it kind of runs through the rock, and then they collect the water, and then it goes to a heat. Here's I think a better, yeah, a heat exchanger, and then you can just produce electricity from it. Now, and then they recircle the same water. So they recycle the same water. So it's not water intensive. But the beauty of this kind of energy is 24/7. It doesn't depend on the sun. It doesn't depend on the wind. It is a 24/7 production of energy, and it's absolutely 100% clean. So and it can be done anywhere. So let's go back to the bill just to kind of, oh, hang on. I'm not sure what that is. I think maybe that's the wrong thing. Yeah, it is the wrong thing. Um, so, hang on. Uh, so just to go back to the bill, and yeah, I'm in the wrong thing. Okay, cancel. Let me see if I can get back. My thing's a little bit stuck. So what this bill does is, why isn't this technology already in California? That's the big question. Well, the reason is we have such tight regulations here in California. So what this bill does is it says, during the exploratory stage of, finding a well. Let me stop sharing, because this is stuck. um, what the bill says is that when you're in the exploratory phase, that you're going to kind of modify CEQA, and CEQA is the California, what is it? CEQA, Environmental Quality Act. And that just, in most projects like this, have to do CEQA in order to prove that they're not going to harm the environment. So what this bill does is it says, okay, we're going to modify CEQA so that we're going to still not do the exploration near water, like near, any kind of river or lake or any kind of water, anything that we could mess up. Plus, the only drawback with this kind of technology is seismic activity. So you don't want to do it near a fault line, right? Because you could, when you're going down in the earth and you're drilling, you don't want to do that near faults. So there are some, but it puts aside some of the CEQA stuff in order to do the exploration to see if you can get down far enough to get that hot rock. Um, but once that's done, if you determine that you're going to continue with the project, then you do full CEQA. But what it does is it allows this technology to come into the state and not have to go through the same hoops that you might normally go through. So again, I think it's a great bill. I think this technology is really the way of the future, 100% clean and giving us constant energy without having to depend on those other factors that we talked about. So I'll leave it at that. That's a lot, I think, in a short amount of time. And let me know if anybody's got questions.
I have to disagree with you. You said you don't have a life. Yes, you do. You do wonderful things. You take care of people. You care about the things that are important and impact the rest of us. You have a life and a wonderful one, I think. Okay.
Thank you, Miguel. That means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
Michelle, your hands up.
Yeah, so I just want to talk for a second about AB 942, which was bill
Solar one. Hmm.
the bill to cut solar to retroactively reduce the solar contracts for people who had them from a 20 to a 10 year or something like that. Anyway, it passed by a very 5 votes, so it was very slim. This is basically going to void out contracts people had that they made, and a lot of people invested in solar. And so, what happened there? I think it's kind of interesting because, again, we've got this dynamic where with the unions and the corporation, PG&E, basically running the show. And I think there was a lot of pressure put on members, basically saying that, well, wealthy people can afford this, and so it's not fair to give them this big break. When in fact, that's not the case. A lot of people invested in this and who are not wealthy, and now they're going to suffer the consequences retroactively. So I think this is the kind of thing we should pay attention to as a club because our district, our city is not a wealthy city. And our representative voted, Lori Wilson voted in favor
For it.
of this
Hmm.
bill. And I think that those people who feel affected by it should contact her and let her know that that was not something that they appreciated. The majority of people were really against this bill. She voted for it anyway. I don't think that's appropriate myself, but people may have different opinions on that. So the bill is now going to go to the Senate, I assume, to the same Energy, Utilities and Energy um, committee before it has to pass that to make it out. So the head of that committee is Josh Becker. He's from District 13
Ooh.
and he is San Mateo, which means money. So of course he's going to vote for this bill, one assumes, because the wealthier districts, they feel like it's fair to do because so it's really up to people at the lower income districts to really express their feelings about this and get it out there so that it doesn't pass in the Senate. We don't have anyone on that committee from Solano County, or yeah, Christopher is not on that committee. But people should be in touch with those people who'll be voting on this if they have an opinion about it. And I don't know if the club wants to do anything or not, but this is going to have a big impact. And PG&E has already raised electric rates 47% in the last few years. So,
Yeah. So I totally agree, Michelle. And you're right. This was an incredibly interesting bill because there are a lot of people who didn't vote. So usually it's pretty unanimous except for the Republicans, but there were 19 people who didn't vote. So
really.
there
Mm.
were 46 people, but that's kind of weak too, right? Because if you add that up, well, they still wouldn't have had the majority because there were 46 people who voted for it. 14 no's and 19 no votes. But you're right. Wilson did vote for it. Right now, it is in Rules Committee waiting for assignment. So what we need to do is get to Chris Cabaldon because he's going to be the next person that we have could touch that would have a say in how he votes. So that would be a good play. But I agree, let Lori Wilson know, hey, we're watching you. That's the first thing because I've had this with her for over the last few years where there have been important votes and I'm watching because one thing about Ledge Info or whatever, you can go to the legislature websites and you can watch the proceedings and they'll show you the votes. And then you can see your assembly person in the room. I have seen her in the room vote and then not vote for an important bill and then vote for another bill. So, like, she's there, but she's just not voting. So, again, and then you have to really, like, hey, why aren't you voting? So, again, Michelle, I appreciate that. You're right on.
That's a good thing to talk to Christopher, but I think that one of the things that the stories aren't getting out there, stories help. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bonnie, but I think a lot of seniors invested, you know, in really expensive solar equipment and took it into account on their retirement, which would be fixed incomes. And now those people are really getting screwed. And the reason it got passed, is my understanding, is they made a compromise that said, well, we'll let you keep it until you sell your house. And then the new people will have, a different contract. So that lowers the value of the house of anyone who invested in that. So that they
Hmm.
kind of, anyway,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
wanted to add that on June 20th, Lori Wilson is going to be at City Hall for the whole day. And I sent an email around, and it would be a good time for people to go and tell her. She wants to hear from us. That's why she's
Well,
spending a
and I've
day
got to
in LA.
warn you that I've heard of her turning people away and saying that she won't talk to them.
Hmm.
So just to give you that heads up, Beverly, because I saw that, but I have had people tell me that they have come to talk to her, and then her staff came out and said, "Oh, she's not going to talk to you."
Well, that would be a great focus for a letter to the editor.
Yeah,
Oh,
so if
oh,
you
hold on,
watch
hold on.
her, excuse me, if you read the email flyer that you sent out in fine print, it has a number and a link that goes to an error 404 page. It doesn't actually go anywhere for contacting Lori Wilson's, I guess, campaign manager or whoever's running her event in Vallejo on the 20th, and they're already booked. So
Thank
you
you.
cannot, as of right now, today, the 11th, you cannot get on her schedule to meet with her if you haven't already done so. Moreover, if you do expect to at least attend that event at City Hall, you should jump on. There's a second link below. You have to register to even show up. This is not open to the public at large. It's for attendees who have registered only. Just a small point of, I hope, clarification on that. So if you haven't
Thank you,
done that
Clifford.
already, please do it tomorrow.
Thank you,
And Michael,
Clifford.
I see your hand up. I don't want to forget you, but I
Michael's
do
hand's
want
been
to.
up a long time. Michael's hand's been up a long time. Michael?
Yeah, I do want to have say one more thing to this,
Okay.
and then we can. I think if
Okay.
that's okay with you through the chair.
Of course. Of
But
course.
I just wanted to say that you can always ask to meet with her. You can always contact her staff. You don't need to wait for these town hall things. You might not be able to talk to her directly, but you can certainly set up meetings. We've met with her as groups. As some of us citizens have just scheduled meetings with her staff and communicated that way. And you can always email and do all that other stuff too. So just want to put that out there.
Thanks, Bonnie. Michael.
So I have a couple questions. The first one is, could you give the short version of the process that was used to support or oppose or watch the bills?
Yeah, so we have a committee. So, the Central Committee meets on the fourth Wednesday. So the Legislative Committee meets on the third Wednesday. And for me, whoever shows up to those meetings is on the committee, whether they like it or not, or whether they don't like it. So that, it's open to the whole Central Committee. So, there's no selection or anything. And the reason I'm chair is because I don't think anybody else wants to do it. And if they do, they can have it. But I got enough on my plate. But so, and then, so like we kind of draw from different people. I'll say, okay, who has bills that they're interested in? Because I am also involved with a number of other groups, like I'm on the Council on Legislation for the California Medical Association. So I hear what their bills of interest are. And a couple of these, like there was one in there that I didn't really talk about, which is it makes HEPA filters covered under Medi-Cal. Okay.
Ooh, yay.
Because we live in a fire-ridden state. These poor people who don't have the means to go out and buy, you know, uh, air filtration systems for their homes. They might have asthma. They might have other medical issues. Even if they don't, I mean, come on, we all need to breathe clean air. So that was one that I brought over from my kind of hearing about that and thinking, I think this is important. So, and then also I'm involved with some climate groups, like, and there are other people on the Central Committee who are like Kathy Carriage and, different climate groups who we follow legislation through the, like, say, the Climate Reality California Coalition, which I'm a part of. We look at all the climate legislation. But you can see they're not all, I mean, we're talking like dozens of bills, but I've kind of honed it down to bills that I think are really important, like the Make the Polluters Pay. I mean, that's a hugely important bill. Those are important bills. So again, and the one that Michelle talked about, the rooftop solar one, and then this one I heard about with the geothermal energy. I mean, come on, this is what we've got to be focusing on at this point. So anyway, and then like Joseph, who's interested in tobacco, he brought the tobacco bills over. So, it's a kind of a mishmash. I mean, if there's somebody who comes and said, "Oh gosh, I'm really interested in this bill," then sure, we'll take a look. And so we at the committee meeting, we talk about the bills and then we decide, are we going to follow them or what our positions are, and then we determine whether we're going to support, whether we're going to oppose, or whether we're just going to watch them, or whether we're not going to even bother. So those are kind of the takes on that. The process we've done, and we've been kind of slow on doing this, and that's, I'm going to blame myself, but our chair, Don Lowry, who is on this call, I see, he at and it's gonna probably will wait till after the budget, but we will write letters to the authors and to the committees that they're in, to support, like, say if we have a support bill, that we support their bill as the Central Committee, the Solano County Democratic Central Committee. And then when we get to the floor vote, like in the second house, like say with Christopher Cabaldon, we might do like a email blast to our members saying, contact Christopher Cabaldon, contact Lori Wilson, say you want them to support these bills, you want them to oppose these bills before they vote on the floor, of their whatever their house they're in. So that's where we are taking action. I hope that answers your question, Michael.
Michael, any other questions?
Well, so just to clarify, that the legislative committee meets on the third Wednesday and they make the decision.
Well, we make a recommendation to the larger central committee who is, so the bill, so we make a recommendation, okay, we think you should support AB 527. And so then at our central committee meeting a week later, the central committee votes on our recommendations. And sometimes they don't like what we're recommending, and somebody will pull it out and we'll talk about it, and we'll vote it up or down or whatever. We'll make another decision on it.
Bonnie,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you so much, Bonnie. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Before
Thank
we
you.
go on to Michelle, I just want to say we all know that there's this big, beautiful bill that that Trump is trying to push through Congress. I want to take a closer look at that and see exactly what the ramifications are, especially with regard to Medicare, Medi-Cal, and Social Security for that matter. I think this kind of interesting. We'll see what happens when it goes to the Senate. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Ah, well, this is going to be pretty short because it's just that kind of a night. People, I think, are probably more interested in talking about what happened at the convention. So I just sent a letter to Paula. I don't know if she wants to bring it up. It's fine if she doesn't. Um, by the way, that was great having Bonnie here and hearing about that. That was some really good information. So, anyway, a letter got sent out from the Central Committee, and it was to all the Democratic electeds in Congress. And the message was basically, you need messaging. It was a fabulous letter. I just, like I said, I just sent it to Paula. I should have sent it earlier so everyone in the United Dems could have seen it. But it's through what we started not that long ago that this resulted. So people here need to realize that we did a really good thing. And so that was kind of a huge deal. And then at the convention, we talked to several county chairs, and they are interested in what we're doing with the communications committee. And they are interested, and they're really smart people. They're sort of starting things on their own as well. So something is happening. It's at the beginning, but something is definitely happening where people realize that the Democratic electeds, frankly, are not good at messaging. They're not meeting the moment. And people from the county level down are starting to realize it's up to us. And they're organizing in a way that hasn't been done before. So that's really exceptional news, I think. And what else? We're working on the websites. We have upcoming meetings about that. And just several other kinds of things, which I don't think I'm going to go into any more detail right now. I
Okay.
think that's enough for me.
Is
But
that
the
it?
convention was good. The
Okay.
convention was good, and we used the communicate. So the communications committee got an email out to all of the county chairs, which is how we hooked up with a couple of them. The county chair from San Bernardino, no, and we were talking to her about, gathering up some high school kids maybe or college kids and going down and helping her precinct walk. And it turns out, yeah, no, that's not what she needs because it's San Bernardino County and precinct walking isn't practical. What she needs is help with social media. So that's what we're going to try to do. Meet people where they are and give them what they need, which the
Any
downside of the convention was that we have the same leadership that we went into it with. Um, so I don't expect a lot of help from the California Democratic Party. We got to be our own best friends.
Sad to hear. Sad to hear. Anything else horrendous or strange or wonderful or bad about the convention other than your concern that you just expressed? I mean, overall, was it a good one or people walked away and they didn't feel all that great about it?
It was the best one I've been to, and I've been going to them
Okay.
for a decade or more. And I couldn't tell you why it was the best, although the fact that now I know that Christopher Cabaldon can really dance. That boy can cut a rug.
Yeah.
Um, which makes me really regret I wasn't at that dance on Friday night because the pictures were hilarious.
All right.
Um,
Good to know because I'm always looking for somebody who can keep up with me.
and
Uh-oh.
I think both
Uh-oh.
him and Tim Knox, his
Mhm.
Okay.
they were both. What else? Cory Booker and Tim Walz both spoke, and they were the highlight. Well, no, running into Annie Maxine was the highlight.
Okay.
Although I didn't get a picture with her, but clearly they're running for president, and either one of them could be just fine. I don't know. 2028 is a long ways away, but both Tim Walz and Cory Booker were the highlight of the trip.
Is
Anybody have any
that on
comment?
YouTube? The Tim Walsh talk, is it on YouTube, do you think?
I would imagine it probably is, yeah. So what I'll do after this meeting is I'll see if I can find that on YouTube and I will send out Bonnie's legislative list, which I have in my other email. I'll send out the YouTube thing. I already sent out your flyer, Beverly, about Travis on June 24th. That went out earlier tonight.
Can you send out the letter that I just sent you as well?
Yeah, that too.
Right. And another comment on the convention, I think that it was a funny mix of, we all realize that this moment in our history is critical. And it was strange to see some people act as sort of like that wasn't happening, and other people meeting the moment. So it was a very kind of whiplash sort of thing, I think, for me. And the reason I think that Cory Booker and Tim Walz were so effective is what they addressed the moment, whereas and so effectively. And I think that by the time they spoke, because it was towards the end, correct me if I'm wrong, Paula, maybe I have a different impression. I think I was kind of worn out with the same stuff coming from the same, officials, and it wasn't really saying much. And I think they just didn't know how to express it, or who knows why. Anyway, so by the time Cory Booker and Tim Walz got there, there were 4,000 people in a room who really needed to hear what they were saying, and they just nailed it. And so I think part of why it was so effective was that we all needed to hear it, and there were a lot of us, and it was sort of maybe if you weren't in the room, it may not affect you that way as much.
Michelle, I saw some of Walter's, and I love what he said. Basically, was don't complain, do something, and that
Yeah.
was kind of his message. That was kind of his. I thought it was pretty cool. I'm a big fan of his, but that's beside the point. Do we have anything else for Bonnie or Michelle at this point before we? Oh,
Don's
I'm
hand
sorry,
is up.
Don. Don, you have your hand up. Don.
Yeah, I was just going to say both Senator Booker and Governor Walz's speeches are on YouTube. You kind of have to dig for them, though. One is Cory Booker. I think the most complete version I found is actually by the Santa Clarita Star, which is obviously a paper down there. So, you know, for whatever reason, at least the last time I looked, Kadam or had not posted the speeches, but you can find them both on YouTube. Unfortunately, I have not been able to find Vice Chair Malcolm Kenyatta's speech. He also did a pretty good job. Um, but I think Michelle was right. A lot of the speeches were very much boilerplate. I commented to someone about halfway through the morning session. Everything's already been said, but not everyone has said it yet. And that's kind of the way it felt. People kept saying the same stuff time and time and time again. And it was like, okay, that's nice. You're against Trump, but what are you going to do about it? So, but yeah, I think there was certainly some glimmers of hope for the future, but balanced with, as Paula said, the results
We
weren't
need to be
exactly voting for
agitated. We need to
radical
be
changes.
agitated and show that we are. I don't know. That's how I feel.
I think I think it's never been so clear what you said, Miguel, is so needed now that we all really need to participate, even if it's a little bit, that's just not everyone's got to get out there and do
Yeah.
something, even if it's a small thing. And I'm hoping that in the next few meetings we have with our different committees here, we'll be kind of again focusing on that. They're doing some great things in North County, the Northern Club, with getting out there in the community, and perhaps we can get some sort of presentation on that to help us out, inspire us a bit in the future.
Clifford, you have your hand up.
Yes,
Cliff?
I do. I don't want to derail anyone's conversation or take away from the agenda, but I do want to ask a question. For those who either have gone and attended the DNC convention in Anaheim, or those who are aware of the moment, to use a good word, a good phrase, what impression for a plan of action to fight fire with fire is there here with the Solano County Democrats or any of our allied Democratic clubs and chapters? Can anyone answer that question? Are we prepared to fight fire with fire against Donald and the Republicans? I'm very curious if that's even a possible agenda issue for the future.
Can I answer that, Michael?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a great question, and that's why we formed the communications committee, because the response was not forthcoming on a federal level or a state level. And that's what the letter that went out to elected Democrats in Congress was saying. You must meet the moment and you must learn how to message. Whether or not I personally don't think that they can do that because they've got such an antiquated top-down structure. And at least in the House, what I hear is that the leadership is not working on that at all. And they are not unified. They're not working as a group. They don't seem to understand that times have changed and they must, as you say, fight fire with fire. But having said that, that's what I'm saying, I guess, about the local groups. The county chairs met at the convention. There's some really good stuff is coming out of that. Uh, they are taking up the mantle of coming up with action plans and talking with each other and messaging. And but again, it's at the beginning because we're so far behind. We're so far behind. But the encouraging thing is that um, a lot of people have similar that question, what are we going to do? And they are trying to answer it now.
Clifford, we had the discussions before we got into I'll get to you, Clifford, and let you ask the next question. Sometimes it seemed to me that between campaigns, the committees, Democratic committees, maybe Republican too, but Democratic kind of go dormant. You know, it's like, okay, we're not going to be too busy right now. We have agreed here, and that's resulted in the communications committee that Michelle's been leading beautifully, by the way, is that we can't do that this time. We got a madman in the White House. And we just can't. We have to speak up, get mad, get angry, get nag in everybody's face. I've heard a couple of potential presidential campaign people. Buttigieg went out recently, and he's got the right attitude. You know, we got to talk back. You know, we can't be polite and political. We have to show the agitation that we feel, the concern that we feel, and I think that that's we're set to do that, Clifford. But we need you, others, everybody to help us get there. And it's a lot of work, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Who had their hand up? Bonnie.
I just want to say that part of the issue is these folks are really scary. They're doing some really scary SHIT. And they're doing scary SHIT to people even like Elon Musk, who started to kiss butt again after his falling out with his boyfriend, right? So even threats to that guy. I mean, these people are really scary, and this is not normal times. And that's the problem. We come from a place of reason and normality, and we don't, it's so egregious that it's hard to even believe that it's happening. And we just have to get ahead. Like, Michelle, Miguel, we just have to catch up and go and surpass. But we just don't think in those terrible ways. We don't want to hurt people. At least I don't. And that's the problem. They do. So we got to take that for real. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Before we leave these issues, anything else on this before we move to the next thing? We're gonna go to the treasurer. Treasurer, anybody? Yes. Somebody? Clifford. Clifford?
Thank you.
And then Michael.
I think that what you just brought up, Dr. Hamilton, is spot on. And I'd like to say, is probably the youngest person just looking around here. I'm 38, probably the youngest person here. I've watched the Republicans shovel shit my whole life and get away with it. I was born in 1986. When I was a little kid, Newt Gingrich came into power. Anybody remember Newt Gingrich?
Oh God.
God, yes.
That little son of a bitch.
Oh yeah.
Who used to host fake meetings where he'd have a podium and a lectern and an American flag behind him and talk to an empty room. But hey, he sounded good.
It worked.
How about Rush Limbaugh before he died of renal failure? Remember that guy?
Heatmonger.
Yeah, little Rush Limbaugh flapping his lips for what, 30 years? How about Roger Ailes? One of Rupert Murdoch's best friends, who came up with the man in the orchestra pit tactic. What he said, and I'm quoting verbatim, you can have two men rush out on stage, both with plans for peace in the Middle East, but some jack-off falls down in the orchestra pit. What do you think the media is going to talk about the next day? He was right. He's smiling from the ninth circle of hell right now, but he was right. Credit where credit's due. So Roger Stone, that name should ring some bells. Steve Bannon, our dear Governor Gavin Newsom was on Steve Bannon's podcast a couple months ago. I'm sure we'd love to grill him over why. But regardless, I name these names because you're right, Dr. Hamilton. You're right. We are dealing with a party who, at their highest ranks of leadership, I suspect, I cannot prove, but I suspect they're a motley crew of malignant narcissists and sociopaths. They do not feel empathy. They do not care. They want power, and they want dominion and domination over others. So that said, I am very frustrated with the Democratic Party. I'm frustrated with the Republican Party. I'm frustrated with politics as a status quo. To that end, I have spent time studying them, understanding them, watching how they win. And as much as I think they are, again, motley crew of malignant narcissists and sociopaths, they are getting results. They currently control 6 out of the 9 Supreme Court justices. They control the House, the Senate, the presidency. They also seem to have a lot of local federal judges in their back pocket. And I think that it is time that we fight fire with fire. I'm not saying we have to suddenly start welcoming malignant narcissists and sociopaths into our ranks. That is counterproductive. But I agree, they are scary people, but so can the Democrats be scary too. And I don't mean scary in a frightening, terrible, horrible way, but I mean scary like a bedtime monster, something that we bring up when we need it and we put it away when we don't need it. It does not have to be a permanent feature of the Democrats, but by the same token, you don't bring a soup spoon to a gunfight and expect to win. So I'd like to offer the following. I have been very frustrated trying to get in contact with John Garamendi for the past 3 months. I have brought literal proposals, counterpoints to Project 2025. I have sent them to his Washington, D.C. address. I've sent them to his local address down on Virginia Street in Vallejo. I have also attempted to contact our state senator, California state senator, Christopher Calderon. I have tried contacting our 2 federal senators, Padilla and Schiff. I have not been able to make much progress with them. I have a lot of fire in my belly, in case you can't tell. So here's what I'd like to propose for all of y'all. I am prepared to be that little firebrand who is the Edward Bernays that we need, if that name makes sense to anyone, if they know who Edward Bernays was. He was the nephew of Freud. He is the one who was personally responsible for getting women to smoke cigarettes back in the 1920s. Torches of freedom, he called them. He was the one who was the man behind the curtains, I'm not exaggerating, who literally was getting presidents to do very bad things for the United Fruit Company in Guatemala. Point being, they seem to have all of the right people at the right time to push their wicked little agendas and get what they want. I say it is time that we fight fire with fire and start pushing back using similar, not identical, but similar tactics so that we win. We stop losing. We become the party of winners. We change the message. We get on social media. We no longer have the stigma that people under the age of 60 associate with the Democratic Party. And that is, hey, you guys got shellacked last year. And you guys barely won with President Biden before that. And what the hell, you guys lost Hillary Clinton with a literal carnival barker that is Donald Trump. That man now has as his Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, who's the wife of the WWE superstar ringmaster. So I think we can do better. And I'd like to help with that. I'd like to take my tools, my talents, my abilities, my savvy, and I'd like to offer it wholesale at no cost to the Democratic Party so that we can win. And that's what I'd like to offer going forward. And if that is of value and can be of help and that aligns with the values we have here, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do, but that is what I offer. And you have my email address, you have my phone. You are welcome to contact me whenever at your convenience, if that is indeed something that would be of value to you.
We would probably like to hear in more detail what it is you think you can do for us, and we will do that. We'll be in touch with you. I certainly will be in touch with you. I should ask you, you're having trouble getting a hold of Garamendi, getting him to talk to him, or Calvaldon? You've not been able to get them to respond to a call, or
Correct.
what exactly?
So let's see, back in March, I believe it was the date. It was March, 3rd week of March, I believe it was. You may recall when Donald declared by one of his little executive orders that he was going to take charge of all state elections going forward. It was in the news for a hot minute, and then we moved on to other things because he's done a lot of crazy shit in the last several months. So I contacted the offices of Lori Wilson, Christopher Calderon, Adam Schiff, John Garamendi, Alex Padilla, and then as a last-ditch effort, because I was unable to reach beyond either thank you for calling, concerned citizen. We'll write that down, blah, blah, blah. Sent emails too. Then I contacted the California Secretary of State. Why? Because I know that it is illegal. I know that that executive order will be challenged in courts and it won't go anywhere. But how many people, how many Californians for that matter, are going to do any research beyond the bare superficial media minimum of, hey, I saw on TikTok, hey, Facebook told me that President Trump is taking control of all elections. That's good enough for me. So I contacted the Secretary of State and I got a lot of static. I was able to speak with what they called the citizen liaison individuals, not the secretary herself, but it was the citizen liaison. And I proposed a public relations campaign of reassurance. I said, what we need to do is seize the moment. We need to immediately drag up the Newt Gingrich flag. I don't care, get a podium, make it an empty warehouse for Christ's sake. But we need to have the governor's office or representative of the governor's office give a message of reassurance to the Californian people that no, not only is that not happening, but our elections in the state of California are fantastic. They're safe, they're secure. We get all the buzzwords, get the word salad in there to reassure people that what President Trump had said and had written down on a piece of paper as an executive order back in March would not happen.
Okay.
I think that what we find is that when people believe something, they behave according to it.
Clifford, what I was getting to is if you're not able to contact some of these people, some of us may be able to help you do that. That's all I was trying to get from you, okay?
Sure.
And
but I want to give you a concrete example of what I was doing because otherwise you think, well, who is this guy? Who's the schmuck? He's talking a lot of words here. Who is this kid?
I understand. I just have a couple other people waiting to talk. Clifford, I will be in touch, I promise, okay? Margie Olson, and then there was one other hand was up. It's not up anymore. Margie?
I'm just wondering if everybody heard Newsom's speech last night and all day today he's had, probably not him, but his office has had this rapid response, which has been really great. I mean, finally what we're all wishing for, he's just stepped up. So I think things that we've been saying, oh, he should do that, he's actually doing. So take a look at the speech if you haven't seen it. The other thing I wanted to tell you, I heard Thompson, he was quoted on the Progress XM station, and he was grilling the Treasury Secretary, and my goodness, he did a great job. So we could be really thrilled that our representatives actually are getting out there and saying things. So maybe it's the pressure from us or the times, but I think we actually are having people do things. And well, Cliff, I think you're probably right. And people are always complaining about Democrats, and what I say is, well, we're the Democrats. That it's a volunteer organization, so if we want things to happen, and look, Michelle's got her communication committee, and you can propose something. Now you've got this club behind you. So if you have great ideas and you want to do something, let us know. So yeah. So anyway, welcome, and thanks for making the Democrats better.
Margie, thank you, Margie. Michelle, you have your hand up.
I do. So just in response to Clifford, the Communications Committee, one of their efforts is to survey locals and then communicate what locals are concerned about to electeds. So that's one of the things we're working on. So if you want to join us to doing that, that would be welcome.
Yes, I would very much like to join you. If you don't have my email or phone number, I will give you that information and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
I need that as well, Clifford, to be in touch with you, okay?
Okay. Is there just en masse, is there a way I can just give you all my email and phone number?
I know I have your email because that's how I got you the link to the Zoom thing, but I don't have your phone number. But if you give it to me, I'll make sure that it gets in the
real quick,
books.
would it be faster, better, and more convenient for all of you to give my contact info just to you, Paula, or each individual person here? Let me know.
Why don't you put it in chat?
Okay.
Oh, might not be enough room in chat. It would be easier to do it more broadly. And if it went to you, Paula, you get to it, to us, right?
Yeah.
Just give it to Paula.
Okay,
Sure,
thank you.
sure,
Then I
sure.
will. Then I will do that. I will.
Okay.
Clifford, I'm so glad you were here tonight. Listen, you guys are all pretty hot tonight. The one thing comes to mind to me is I'm so old. I remember the Clinton administration. They learned something early on. The Republicans will put out an insult or a lie, and God knows we've got a president now that every other word out of his mouth is a lie. And we would take a week or 2 or 10 days to respond to that. And Clinton learned that quick response is key. While the insult is still there in the mind of people that heard, they've got a response from the Democratic side. And it's important that that happened quickly. And I couldn't agree with that more. And anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. Anything else before we go on? Yes, Leah.
Are we on the good of the order right now, or are we still on some other part of the agenda?
No, we're on whatever you want us to be on. We're going to move next to the Treasury report from the Treasurer, but that can wait. That's next.
Yeah.
I can wait till after the business is done.
Okay, very good. I'll call on you then.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Treasurer's report's really short because I sent it to you all. We have just under $4,000 in the bank. We didn't spend very much money. And since the last meeting we had, the social hour at Michelle's, those were the only expenses. So that's the treasurer's report.
Okay. Any questions about that specifically, Treasurer? What about June 14th, no Kings protest? Who can speak to that? Anybody?
I can.
Yes, Paula?
So Trump, of course, I'm sure you all know, is having his military parade in Washington, D.C. on the 14th. Fortunately, according to Google Weather, it's going to rain. Yay!
No, the even better thing is there's going to be lightning.
Oh, that's even better. Yeah. So there are literally 1,000 protests around the country on Saturday. The one in Vallejo is from 10 to 11:30. They're saying City Hall because I think it's easier than Unity Plaza. People don't know that Unity Plaza is right there next to the library. So if you get to City Hall, you'll find it. 10 to 11:30. I think they're going to have some speakers. But yeah, they're everywhere. My hometown in South Dakota is one of 3 in South Dakota that's having a No Kings protest. I'm so proud of them.
You
What
can't
was the
say
time on that again, Paula?
Vallejo is 10 a.m. to 11:30. City Hall.
okay. How about acknowledgement? Assemblymember Wilson visiting. Can anybody speak to that?
Well, we
Yes.
did already kind of address that. Apparently, the sign up is already full.
Okay, very good. Tesla, the demonstrations have moved?
Yeah, they have. They
Okay.
have. According to Indivisible, Claire Severson with Indivisible, they've moved up a block closer to Home Depot.
All right. Okay.
And I would imagine that that's not happening at all this Saturday because people will be at Unity Plaza
All right.
or City Hall.
Michelle, your hands up.
Yeah, I just want to say about Lori Wilson and there not being any room left on the agenda, that we certainly could, as a club, write a letter or ask for a meeting with her if there are things that we wanted to talk about.
Yes, we could.
Yeah, okay, can do that. All right. Do I have any announcements, comments, issues to be brought up before we leave? Yes, Margie.
Yeah, just speaking of No King's Day, at 12 o'clock, there is a rally in Fairfield in front of the county building. So
Actually,
you
that's
could
been
go to.
canceled. I've heard that
No, it's back on.
Oh, it is. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Don.
Okay,
Cool.
all right.
So
Leah,
you
your
can
hand
go
is still up.
to Vallejo and then go there, or if you don't have time, just go to Fairfield.
And
Okay,
there's one in Vacaville too, and
Yeah.
Benicia.
It's at 10 o'clock.
all right.
Yeah.
Leah, your hand's still up?
Okay, so as some of you might know, Fresh Air got a grant to do some environmental justice work here in Vallejo. We are close to hiring our assistant who will be working on the grant, and so we're getting ready to go full-fledged with the work that we need to do. The focus is collecting data so that people can understand how the data affects you and how environmental justice is important. And so we're going to be doing a lot of community outreach meetings. And one of the things that was interesting being at city council till 1 o'clock in the morning again last night was that the city apparently has got awarded some money from the Monsanto lawsuit. And apparently they've had $4 million sitting in a pot somewhere that nobody knew about. And so that was brought out in the budget session last night. And so I went up and I spoke to the fact that the city is working on the environmental justice element for Vallejo, and they have claimed that there's no money, so it's minimal work that's going to be done on it. And so that's why Fresh Air Vallejo has volunteered to do more outreach for the city. But now that we know they have $4 million sitting there that's supposed to be used for environmental work, which is odd that nobody ever brought that up when we were talking about EJ. They were going to be talking to the city manager about that because they should be using that work to supplement the outreach that we need to bring community voice for environmental justice. And the other thing was Lori Wilson. I spoke with her for a little bit last Thursday at the fairgrounds Caltrans meeting that they have for the community out there for the crossover or whatever it is that they're calling fairgrounds, the work they're going to be doing at fairgrounds. And I told her that as a member of Fresh Air Vallejo, we were concerned about bypassing any of the environmental protections for the work they're going to do on AB 697. So she has welcomed us to come and sit down and talk with her. She's going to bring in her environmental impact person to come talk to us, and so that we could sit down and ask questions, get some answers. So that meeting is going to be set up in the future. We got to figure out what kind of format we want to go. But she's willing to bring in other parties, including people from Marin, to talk about the environment. And so we're looking forward to having dialogue with her. Because she says that it's not about bypassing any requirements and it's just to speed it up. I said, yeah, we're used to people telling us that they're speeding up the process and they leave out some important information in there when they speed up the process. And so we want to make sure that all environmental concerns are being addressed if anything is to move forward. So we're going to have that meeting with her sometime in the future. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Leah. Lona, you're on.
Jean.
Oh, yes, I would like to talk. Yeah, I would like to talk to you, Michelle. I think I have your phone number about writing a letter to Lori Wilson or getting the communications committee that I missed the last meeting of to
Yeah,
write a letter to her because I saw that thing and I wanted to go to it and I wish I'd read it and registered because what's the point? If you're not registered, she doesn't want to hear you. I wish I'd put that in bigger letters.
I don't think the registration to go to the meeting is closed. It's the one-on-one meetings that you can get an appointment for that's closed. So I think you can still go to the meeting, the general meeting, but the one-on-one appointments are closed.
Those meetings are just always political advertisements for themselves. Anytime a politician has an open meeting, it means they just blabber on about how they deserve to be elected. No, I thought she was going to have interaction with her audience, and now I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Don Jordan, your hand's up.
Yeah, just remind everybody, Juneteenth in Vallejo will be on June 21st from 11 to 5 p.m. All are welcome.
And where will it be?
It'll be at the Barbara Candelas waterfront ground. Green.
The Candelas Green.
Wonderful place.
Yeah.
Memory of a wonderful woman is mine. Another thing comes to mind.
Yeah.
Anything else before we leave tonight? I want to thank want to thank Michelle and Bonnie and Clifford for your so much feedback tonight. Thank you so much. It means a lot to us and we need it. And I promise you, Clifford, we're not going to play patty cake nice. You know, we're not going to be nice. We're going to be very aggressive in a way of being, we're all riled up. We've got a crazy, mad person in the White House. End of story. Anything else before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Thank you for inviting me. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
thanks for being here.
It was
It
my
was lovely.
You're a blessing, Bonnie. Anybody else? Anything? Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.
Good night.